I do have a question.
I agreed with that.
I do have a question. From your perspective, Brittany, how was it for you? Correct me if I'm wrong. You grew up with just your mother.
So I was raised by my mom till about like 9, and then my grandma kind of took over. So when I was growing up, I thought my mom just didn't want to be around, but my grandma was really controlling and was basically like, I'm the mom now. So like she kicked my mom out, and my grandma was my caretaker, my grandma and grandpa. So I was raised with my grandparents the other half of my life.
Okay.
Nigga, what?
One thing that you're going to notice, a lot of children that come from this type of background end up just like Brittany Renner, growing up doing a lot of things for attention and talking with no consciousness, because a lot of grandparents overly love their grandchildren. So she had a disconnect from her mother, and she also had a disconnect from her father. Whenever children have a disconnect from both parents, they would never be the same again because they really don't have that true love. This is why I tell a lot of guys, if you're stepping up to be a stepfather, you have to understand the trauma that the kids have already went through is going to keep them from treating you like a real father.
How was that for you in terms of just learning how to be a woman whenever you reach that point?
I felt like a lot of their ideas were just really outdated. I felt like they were really strict and it was smothering. So even just going to a simple party or going to a friend's house, like as an adult, do I see why maybe parents aren't so quick to let you go over to someone's house? Yes, but it was to a place where you couldn't even explore.
And this is also a reason why when you get to college and after high school, you see who the girls for the streets are more clearly. It's because a lot of women that were sheltered and were strict wanted to be free and couldn't be free. And when they get to a certain age where they can think on their own, they just run buck wild. If you go to college, you would notice a lot of these girls, they are going to mess around with a lot of dudes because their parents kept them sheltered.
I didn't really learn too much from my grandma about being a wife or how to be in a relationship because I always felt like they just tolerated each other. I never really saw the love, like the bond. I've never really seen that. It's just always something I've known to be true, but I've never seen anybody do it. So I felt like my grandma was trying to get me to cook and do little stuff like that, but it just was never something I really took an interest in. I'm like, I genuinely never felt like I belonged in the kitchen. Like, and that's where, too, I resented my thought process a lot growing up because I'm like.
Also, you have to realize when she's a child, she's watching cartoons. And cartoons are showing her a different type of love because that's what keep people interested in. It's this feeling they think they're supposed to have from love. But if you look at grandparents, a lot of grandparents don't show that much love because they learned to survive. You have to look at being in a relationship as survival mode, not some type of fairy tale that's supposed to make you walk outside every day, feeling like you're just on cloud 9 because you're with the person for the rest of your life. You're not going to see that in old school relationships because a lot comes with staying with someone for the rest of your life. Understand that. She saw grandparents who have time. They put in time. They've went through a lot, so they're not going to be that affectionate. But as a child, she's looking at love like it's supposed to be in the movies.
Like, why can't I just be a little bit more simple, a little bit more obedient, maybe more agreeable, not have such a strong opinion, not be so introspective? That's just where I'm just different. So I feel like my grandma tried to teach me maybe how to cook, but as far as catering to a man, no. I learned everything on the fly. And that's where I think sometimes maybe I get a little frustrated with the internet's perspective because I'm like, you don't even know what I've had to go through to even be able to speak with this awareness. Like I've had to bump my head so many times to just be able to sit in my car and give you a sermon, you know? So
see, right now what she's trying to do is I call this dry victimization. That's where she's trying to place herself as a victim. So when you look at the actions that she's been doing online, then it's like, oh, she's a victim and she's doing this because she hasn't been taught that. No, Brittany is still for the streets. Brittany is still a woman that was telling women how to play guys, and she went out and played a man. She do not realize that stench is going to follow her for the rest of her life, the same way Mia Khalifa's stench is going to follow her for the rest of her life. If this wasn't a digital world, then she can be able to play victim because no one would know her past. But being that she became so popular online, just by being a 304 and being for the streets, the victimhood would never ever work for her because they saw that before they learned this. They should have learned this before she did that. That's the problem that she's going to face.
I just never felt like I really was prepared to be a wife ever. Genuinely.
And you're not alone. I think a lot of girls feel like that. Like, I mean, I don't think the stuff that we talk about on these podcasts would be so shocking if women weren't lied to for 50 years.
Yeah.
And I think it's like, even talking to Andrew today, like, wasn't it helpful? Like, when he was talking about stuff, even me, and I listened to this stuff all the time, I was like, oh, I never thought of that. Like, when he was talking about how to get a guy to stop playing video games, I was like, I wish I knew this. I was like, wow.
That's actually a good one when I think about it. Yeah. I want to try it.
Do you think that coming from a 2-parent home, and it's like a loving environment, it's for everybody, that it sets you up more for success to be able to operate in relationships or be willing to submit to whoever the man is because you've seen it growing up, or does it not have an effect?
I think that's a really great question. I know a lot of people who grew up in dual parent houses.
Before she answers, I just want to say, growing up in a dual parent shows structure, but if you do not have a leader in the house, which means if the father is not the leader, it does more damage to the child. If the father is beta, it does more damage to the child because the child needs to learn to survive in the real world. If the mother is the leader and the father is just there to go along, it's going to weaken the child, and the child's going to feel spoon-fed, and the child is going to feel victim. That's just how I feel. I kind of feel like a child needs to be with a strong father at all times. If you look at girls who have strong fathers, they grow up better. You look at a man who has a strong father, he grows up better. Whenever you just have weak parents, you grow up wild. Whenever you're raised by your grandparents, you grow up wild.
Households, and they saw their mother getting cheated on and staying. And I know like someone recently, they were married for like 25 years or so, or 23 years, and she left basically when the kids were old enough to just, like, none of them were in high school anymore. And I remember when I was talking to her, she felt like she was setting her kids up for success because we're all under the same roof. They have a better chance of whatever, right? And it still was damaging because you are witnessing your mother tolerate disrespect for security.
How did the kids know?
And she has a point there. If children are raised in a house where they're seeing the mother be abused, it traumatizes them too. I agree. But we talk about it online like this is what's happening in 90% of relationships, and it's not. It's still a small portion of society that are going through these traumatized situations. And when you come online amplifies the worst of life to where it tricks people into believing the entire world is like this, and it's not. That's the biggest delusion whenever it comes to modern society. We are tricked by the internet what the real world is. People are scared to go into the real world to verify if it's true or not.
How the kids know what?
That she was being cheated on.
It was something that this particular situation, I know one instance was like one of their family friends.
Oh shit.
Yeah, it was really close to home stuff. And there was another scenario where
it was one of the family friends they were cheating on, or was that told them?
No, it was that they were cheating with one of their family friends. So like someone we go over to her house all the time, but my dad is sleeping with her.
Oh, so they would see the parent cheat?
I'm not exactly. I don't think it was they physically saw it, but it was something that the mom would share. That they would hear.
Back in the day, a lot of guys had children by different women. That's just how it was. When you're talking 60s and 70s, women really gravitated towards the alpha male, and a lot of alpha males back in the day had multiple kids. My grandmother had 13 kids by 2 guys, 7 by one, 6 by another, and her friends had 21 kids. A lot of grandparents back in the day still had that slave breedership in them. So women were popping out kids left and right with random guys. That's just how it was. You don't have that many relationships where a woman had 15 kids by the same dude. You just didn't see it. Down south, you saw a lot of dysfunctionality.
arguments too.
Yeah.
Like if they weren't, even if they
Yeah.
weren't involved in the actual argument, they would overhear, which obviously, you know, exposing your kids to that stuff is one thing. But the other instance was, the dad was going out to the club with like the son, and he had a girl with him.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's like that direct, like, I don't respect your mom in this way. I can do what I want to do, and your mom's still going to stay. So that's where I feel like it really depends on what's going on in that household, because seeing your mom be basically disrespected for comfort, it's like it sends the wrong message about love.
I agree. Like,
not really. What she's not understanding is a lot of women are going to gravitate towards a man that they feel is dominant and have more women. A lot of these women gravitate towards the wrong guy. Everyone is still going off of the fairy tale part of life, what they see on TV, and they're thinking both parties are supposed to be happy at the same time. It doesn't work like that. When it comes to a woman, the same thing that makes her cry is typically the same thing that makes her stay. This is what a lot of guys are trying to understand about women. It's like, well, men are treating you good, but then you treat them bad. That's what she's trying to say. Like, how could you just put up with this from a guy who's blatantly cheating, who's blatantly doing this? It's because the women want to be in those relationships, and they have expressed this and showed this time after time, year after year. We're learning that the fairy tale online is not true. This is what brings guys here. They're trying to figure out, why do women feel more comfortable in bad relationships than they do in good relationships? Go over to Just Purely Things and finish watching the rest of this interview. It's a really good interview, a really good talk. Just Purely Things is one of those that's really coming on the scene. I really like what she's doing. Comment, like, subscribe to both of my channels. Hasta la vista.